Welcome back to Retired UK. If you have spent your whole working life saving, building, and adding one thing after another to your pot, here is something almost nobody tells you. Once you are past 65, the rules quietly change. The retirees who end up with the most money in their pocket are not the ones who hold on to everything. They are the ones who work out which bits are secretly costing them and let those bits go. There are 7 things in particular that the sharpest retirees in this country tend to get rid of after 65. And if you are still holding on to 1 or 2 of them, they could be costing you a lot more than you think. Yet fees, in lost growth, and in tax, you did not need to pay. Here is what makes this tricky. Some of the things on this list look like assets. They feel like part of what you have built. They sit on your bank statement or in your garage, and you think of them as wealth. But a few of them are quietly working against you every single year you keep them. And the frustrating part is that nobody warns you, because there is usually someone making money by keeping you holding on. So today I'm going to draw this out for you step by step and walk you through the 7 things smart retirees quietly let go of after 65, and why letting go of each one can leave you with more money, less stress, and a lot less exposure to HMRC. Before we get going, a quick honest note. I'm not an independent financial advisor, and I am not a tax advisor. Everything here is for general information, to help you understand the landscape and ask better questions, not to tell you exactly what to do with your own money. If that sounds fair, give this video a like. It genuinely helps this reach other retirees who might be sitting on things that are quietly draining them. And if you are new here, hit subscribe, because this is the kind of thing nobody tells you until the money has already gone. Right, let's get into the 7. Number 1, a great big pile of idle cash. Let's start with the one that feels safest, which is exactly why it is so dangerous. Picture a big block sitting in a savings account, earning next to nothing. Having a rainy day fund is smart, everybody needs one. But a lot of retirees keep far more than that, tens of thousands of pounds, sometimes much more, sitting there doing nothing because cash feels safe. Here's the problem. That cash is not safe at all. It is quietly shrinking every year because prices keep rising while the number in your account stays exactly the same. In real terms, in what it can actually buy you, that money is going backwards while it sits there. And here is where HMRC comes in. If that cash is earning a bit of interest, once you go over your personal savings allowance, that interest becomes taxable income, and it stacks on top of your pension income. With the tax thresholds frozen the way they have been, that stacking can tip more of your income into a higher band than you realize. So, a giant cash pile manages to do the worst of both worlds. The part earning nothing is eaten by inflation, and the part earning something can quietly push up your tax bill. Let me draw you 2 retirees. The first keeps far more than any emergency could need in a plain savings account because the stock market makes him nervous. 10 years later, the number on the screen looks the same, but his weekly shop, his heating bill, and his council tax have all crept up around him, so that same pile buys noticeably less. The second keeps a sensible cushion, enough to sleep soundly, and puts the rest to work in a steady way that suits her age, perhaps through her ISA. Same starting point, but one of them quietly went backwards just by standing still. Quick, honest question. Are you holding far more cash than you would ever actually need for an emergency? If that is you, drop a yes in the comments below. If your cash is right size, drop a no. I read these, and I suspect a lot of people are about to realize they are sitting on more than they need. Number 2, a high-fee annuity. An annuity is a contract where you hand over a lump sum and in return get a guaranteed income for life. It sounds wonderful. But here is what the glossy brochure tends to leave out. Some of these products, especially the more complicated ones, carry very high charges. There are the upfront costs baked into the rate you are offered. There are ongoing charges. And if your circumstances change and you want out, you often cannot get your capital back at all. And here is the tax sting that catches people out. The income from a purchased life annuity is only partly tax-free, and the rest is taxed as income, stacking on top of your state pension and anything else coming in. Now, to be fair, a simple annuity can genuinely suit some people who want the certainty and understand exactly what they are giving up in exchange. But the complicated, expensive versions are a different story. The smartest retirees either steer well clear or take a hard look at the one they already hold to see what it is really costing them each year, because that number often shocks people. Picture someone who has sold a wonderful sounding annuity, guaranteed income for life, nothing to worry about. What was not spelled out clearly was the poor annuity rate baked in, and the fact that if she needed a lump sum back for an emergency, she simply could not get it. A few years later, sitting down with an advisor who is not on commission, she works out that the income she is getting is modest once everything is accounted for, and there is no flexibility at all. Compare that to a retiree who instead kept his pot invested through drawdown and drew from it on his own terms. He kept control, kept flexibility, and kept more of the growth for himself. Number 3, a life insurance policy you no longer need. This one is delicate, so let me be careful with it. A lot of people bought life cover, sometimes a whole of life policy with a cash value attached decades ago when the children were small, there was a mortgage to cover, and a spouse who would have really struggled without that income. Fair enough at the time. But by the time you are past 65, very often those reasons have quietly disappeared. The children are grown and independent. The mortgage is paid off. There is enough set aside that nobody is left in real difficulty. So, the honest question smart retirees ask is this: is this policy still protecting someone who genuinely needs it? Or am I paying a monthly premium out of pure habit for protection I no longer need? For some people, there is still a real reason to keep it, and that is completely valid. But for a lot of others, that premium is just draining money every month that could be doing something far more useful for them while they are alive to enjoy it. Picture a couple in their late 60s still faithfully paying into a policy they took out decades ago. Back then, it made total sense. Now the mortgage is gone, the kids are grown and working, and either one of them would be financially fine without the other's income. Yet the direct debit keeps going out every month, out of habit rather than need. When they finally sit down and ask what that policy is actually doing for them today, they realize they have been paying for years for something whose job is already done. Number 4, a timeshare. Nearly universal on this list, and for good reason. A timeshare feels like an asset. You have got the paperwork to prove it, but ask anyone who has tried to sell one. They are famously difficult to get rid of, and very often worth close to nothing on resale. Meanwhile, the maintenance fees never stop, and they tend to creep up year after year whether you use the place or not. So, you have got something that is hard to sell, worth almost nothing, and that charges you every single year for the privilege of owning it. That is not an asset. That is a bill wearing a disguise. And in retirement, on a fixed income, those fees are coming straight out of money you could be spending on something you actually enjoy. Be careful of the exit scams that target people desperate to get out. But freeing yourself from the endless rising fees is very often worth the effort. Picture a retiree who bought into a timeshare 20 years ago with good intentions of annual family holidays. The visits dwindled as the grandchildren grew up and everyone's diaries got busier. The one thing that never dwindled was the maintenance fee, creeping higher every single year. He looks into selling and finds there are barely any buyers, and the exit companies circling him want a hefty upfront fee just to try. So he keeps paying year after year for a place he no longer visits, simply because getting out feels too hard. Number 5, a giant position in a single share. This one can look like a wonderful success story right up until the moment it is not. Plenty of people who worked for the same company for decades end up holding a huge chunk of their wealth in that one company's shares, whether through a share save scheme or simply because it did well and they never trimmed it. It feels brilliant while it is climbing, but here is the danger. If your entire retirement is riding on one company, and even great companies stumble, it can take a frightening slice of your savings down with it, right at the age when you no longer have years of a wage to recover. And there is a tax trap here too. Often that position has grown so much that selling would trigger a large capital gains tax bill, so people freeze and hold on purely to avoid the tax. But letting the tax tail wag the dog is exactly how people end up watching a huge chunk of their savings evaporate. The smarter move is a gradual, sensible sell-down, using your annual capital gains tax allowance each year, spreading the gains over several tax years rather than triggering one enormous bill in one go, and perhaps feeding some of it into your ISA along the way. Picture a man who spent 30 years at one firm and built up a large pile of its shares. He is proud of them and emotionally attached, and they have grown to be well over half of everything he owns. Then the company hits a rough patch, as even great companies sometimes do, and the share price falls hard. A huge slice of his life savings disappears at exactly the point when he has no years of paychecks left to rebuild it. Now picture his neighbor, who years earlier trimmed her position gradually, using her allowance each year and spreading it across a wider, more balanced portfolio. When the storm hits, she barely feels it. Before the last two, quick pause. If you want to take an honest look at your own situation, drop a comment with the number of these 7 you think might apply to you. I read everyone, and it genuinely helps me know what to cover next. Number 6. High interest debt. This one seems obvious, and yet it is remarkable how many people carry it straight into retirement, often quietly, often with a bit of shame attached. I am talking about a balance sitting on a high-interest credit card or store card. Here is why it belongs on this list. A balance like that is the one thing on your statement that is a guaranteed loss. Every month, it takes a chunk of your fixed income and hands it over in interest for nothing in return. There is no ISA, no pension fund, nothing that reliably pays you what a high-interest card is reliably charging you. So while everybody else is out chasing an extra % of return on their investments, the smartest retirees know that clearing a high-interest balance is one of the most powerful guaranteed moves they can make. Paying it off is like earning that interest rate risk-free, instantly. It frees up your monthly income, and it stops a quiet bleed that drags on everything else. Picture a retiree telling herself she will pay the card down eventually, while simultaneously fretting over squeezing a bit more return out of her ISA. Here is the cruel maths. The rate that card charges her is almost certainly far higher than anything her investments can reliably earn. So, every month she loses more to interest than she could ever hope to gain elsewhere. She is running up a down escalator. Clearing that debt first does something no spreadsheet fully captures too. It lifts a genuine weight off her shoulders and helps her sleep at night, which is worth just as much as the maths. Number 7, and the last one. An investment mix you never updated. This one hides in plain sight because it does not feel like something you are holding on to at all. It is the pension or ISA allocation you set up years ago, back when you were working, and simply never revisited. When you had decades ahead of you and a wage coming in, it made sense to take more risk, because if the market dropped, you had time and income to ride it out. But that same aggressive mix, carried unchanged into your late 60s and beyond, can be genuinely dangerous because now you are living off this money. There is no wage to replace what a downturn takes, and a sharp drop in the wrong years, just as you start drawing on your pension, can do lasting damage you never fully recover from. The opposite mistake happens too. Some people get so nervous of the markets that they end up almost entirely in cash or low return holdings, which brings us right back to problem number 1. Quietly losing to inflation. Either way, the mistake is the same, setting a mix once and never revisiting it as your life changed. Picture a retiree who built a bold, share-heavy pension pot in his 40s when he had decades ahead of him. Right decision at the time, but he is 67 now, drawing an income from that very pot, and he never changed a thing. A sharp downturn hits early in his retirement, right as he is selling investments to fund his monthly income, and the damage locks in permanently. Now picture his neighbor, same age, who gradually dialed back her risk as she approached retirement. When the same downturn hits, she has got calmer, steadier holdings to draw her income from and can let the riskier portion recover in its own time. Same market, two very different outcomes, decided years earlier by whether either of them bothered to check the settings. So here is your simple checklist. Right-size your cash and stop letting a giant idle pile shrink while its interest quietly feeds your tax bill. Scrutinize any high-fee annuity and work out exactly what it is costing you each year. Re-examine a costly life insurance policy if nobody depends on your income anymore. Free yourself from a timeshare. The money is already spent. The fees do not have to keep coming. Reduce a dangerously concentrated single share, spreading the risk sensibly and managing the tax along the way. Wipe out high-interest debt. It is the one guaranteed loss on your statement. And update your investment mix so your risk actually fits the life you are living now, not the one you had 30 years ago. None of these 7 announce themselves as a problem. That is exactly why the sharpest retirees go looking for them on purpose. And notice the thread running through several of them. Idle cash throwing off taxable interest, an annuity taxed as income, a concentrated share sitting on an unrealized gain. Trimming the excess is not just about cutting fees and lowering risk. It is one of the most effective ways to quietly keep more of your own money out of HMRC's hands year after year. If you recognized 1 or 2 of these in your own life, please do not take that as a telling off. Recognizing it is the hard part, and you have just done it. You do not need to fix all 7 this week. Just pick the one that made you wince a little and find out honestly what it is costing you. If this opened your eyes today, give it a like. It helps more retirees stumble across this same honest inventory. And if you are not subscribed to Retired UK yet, now is a good time. Because the next thing the sharpest retirees do differently is already on its way, and I would love for you to be here for it. Take care of yourself and remember this. The wealth you keep in retirement is not just about what you saved. It is about what you finally stopped letting quietly drain away. See you in the next one.